Welcome, everyone. I will make a brief start, even though we have still a minute to go, but then I don't steal any time from the authors, and I just say a few words about myself. Yes, my name is Stephan Lukosch. I'm a professor at the HIT Lab New Zealand, the Human Interface Technology Lab. We are placed in Christchurch, Canterbury. I pitched the lab. Well, I know how it was, so a major message was, whenever you're interested in visiting New Zealand as an academic, reach out. We are really happy to welcome people and host people. We can't pay for your flight, but we would be actually really happy to host you. Yes, so I'm the session chair of this session on learning and training number 2. I don't know why this session didn't get a subtitle like Learning and Training 1 that was about industrial, and Learning and Training 3 is about sport and movement. A task for everyone in the room, think about a good subtitle that this Learning and Training 2 session should have gotten, and pay attention to the presentations. Yes, and now I've talked long enough to be at the time that the session should start. We have 4 presentations in this session. All 4 are local, and all 4 presenters are here, so don't leave the room. The first paper is on investigating extended reality-powered digital twins for sequential instruction learning, the case of a Rubik's Cube. And the presenter is Pasquale Cascarano. He's a postdoc researcher at the University of Bologna, Italy, focusing on the intersection of artificial intelligence, extended reality in various domains such as art, fashion, education, and Rubik cubes.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. This is a joint work with Shirin Hajahmadi, Lorenzo Stacchio, Alessandro Giacche, and Professor Gustavo Marfia, all from University of Bologna. Okay, I want to start with this talk by mentioning David Kolb, experiential learning cycle. He divided the whole learning cycle into 4 stages, but he assessed that, well, learning by doing is the main paradigm for all these stages. Well, in the literature, extended reality and digital twins have been found to be very effective for enhancing learning by doing, since they enables hands-on practice, they enables, of course, they offers, of course, dynamic real-time guidances which can improve skill development and knowledge transfer. Okay, if we look again at the literature, we found a gap. Okay, in this talk we focus on sequential instructional learning, and if we look to the literature, we found a gap of system which merges both digital twins and extended reality for sequential instructional learning. So we focus on that, and we focus also on the task of Rubik's Cube. Rubik's Cube is one of the most famous brain teaser. It is a 3D puzzle, basically. What is interesting about Rubik's Cube is that it has lots of combination, but there exist also lots of algorithms that can address its solution in very few steps, at most 20-25 steps. Here you have an example. What is interesting about this algorithm is that to handle them, you have to face with a big problem, which is understanding their notation. Each symbol in this notation represents a face to be rotated of the Rubik's Cube, and the direction of the rotation, which can be clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, so our proposal merges, as I said, digital twins and mixed reality framework, in a unified framework for enhancing procedural learning tasks, and we focus on the task of learning the notation of the Rubik's Cube, and also how to perform a sequence of steps. 3 different forms of guidances are considered, in this case have been implemented, and I will describe them in details in the next slides. Okay, now some tips about the system. All the users that have been involved were using the Vario 3. Okay, they of course interact with a virtual cube which is a virtual replica of a physical cube, which is a smart cube. These two cubes are linked. So the virtual replica basically mirrors the state in real time of the physical cube. And of course, among the user and the virtual cube, we have these MR interfaces, which, as I said, I will describe in the next slides. Okay, this is our methodology. We divided the whole experiment in 3 phases. The first is a basic familiarization phase. Then the learning phase depends, of course, on the interface, on the learning modality that we are using. And then, as it happens at school, you have an assessment phase, 2 assessment phases. In this phase, the user had to perform a sequence of first 5 moves and then 10 moves. We collected some data, many data, so the completion time of the assessment phase, the performance accuracy, the usability, the cognitive load, and the technology acceptance. We involved, in our experience, 45 participants. For each modality, we selected 15 participants. Okay, so now let's describe in detail the mixed reality interfaces that we have implemented. The first interface is referred to as textual. In this case, the user are provided with a 2D textual annotation, which is the white paper that you can find there. On this paper, we reported the rotation, so a 2D, let's say, representation of a rotation, and the relative symbol, okay? In this case, no visual cues are provided, and the user can just manipulate, can just rotate the physical cube. The virtual cube, in this case, just mirrored the state of the physical one. The second modality is referred in the following as visual modality. In this case, real cues are provided, a green arrow, as you can see in the video. Also, I don't know if you see that, but there is also a green box, a green box which highlights the face that must be rotated. And, so we have visual cues. Instead of a 2D paper reporting the rotation, in this case, we have an animated rotations, which, the user can decide if he wants to view the rotation through this animation. Okay, and again, in this case, the user just modified the state of the physical cube. So only the physical cube in this case is rotated by the user. Concerning the last modality, we have this interactable modality. Well, in this case, again, visual cues are provided. The arrows, in this case, indicates the face that must be rotated and also the direction of the rotation. For this third modality, well, the novelty with respect to the other two is that the user must perform the rotation first on the virtual cube and then on the physical one, as you can see here. Okay, one common aspect between the 3 modalities, across the 3 modalities, is the presence of the the yellow panel that you can see there. On that yellow panel, you can find the instruction that must be performed, so the steps that must be performed. And this panel also provides user with, a real-time feedback about the correctness of the rotation that has been performed. Okay, now let's move to the results. We analyzed the 3 modalities now in terms of success rate, accuracy, and correct moves. As you can see from figure 1, the box plots are highlighting that the correct, in terms of correct moves, the visual modality and the interactable modality perform the best, basically. There are no significant differences across, among the visual modality and interactable modality, but we have big differences with the textual one, which is performing very bad. These results are confirmed also by the accuracy and also by the success rate. By success rate, in this case, we mean, we calculate the percentage of users that are performing the whole steps during the assessment phase in a correct way. Okay, concerning the time performance, we analyzed the overall time and also the time that all the users, were the time of each steps for the two assessment phase. So we have 5 steps for the first assessment phase and 10 steps for the second assessment phase. And in general, we can say that we don't have significant differences among the 3 modalities. However, we can see from table 1 that, the interactable modality, in this case, the participants facing with interactable modality were faster than the others. Okay, concerning cognitive load, we don't have any consistent differences among the methods, among the modalities. However, we point out that concerning the overall cognitive load, the visual modality was, scored the best with respect to the other 2 modalities. We also computed the perceived complexity of the assessment phase, and here we found out that the visual modality was perceived as the least complex modality, with a strong difference between the visual one and the textual one. We found a very marginal difference between the interactable one and the visual one. However, what we found out is that there exists a strong negative correlation between the APPC metric and the accuracy. This suggests that, of course, the higher the perceived complexity, the lower is the accuracy. Concerning, again, usability and technology acceptance, we did not find any statistical differences across the modalities. We will comment these results also in the next slides. Of course, our analysis was driven by 3 research questions. The first research question aims at evaluating the accuracy, the differences among the 3 modalities in terms of accuracy. As I pointed out, the most effective modality were the interactable one and the visual one. Concerning the textual one, we point out that its a poor spatial integration, has compromised the results. This is a nice finding, because in this case we are basically saying that visual cues and also animated rotation can improve the accuracy in this kind of task. Again, concerning the textual modality, we point out also that it was perceived as the highest complex modality with respect to the other 2. This, according to us, may be due to the fact that, users struggled to, to translate a 2D rotation, representation of a rotation, into a 3D rotation. Concerning the relation between time and accuracy, we did not find any statistical differences in time. But what we found out is that if we consider, again, the accuracy and the execution time for some steps during the assessment phase, we found a negative correlation. So, in particular, these steps are exactly in the middle. These results must be investigated, of course, in future works. However, in this case, we can say that the longer the time, the lower the accuracy in this case. As I told you, concerning usability, cognitive load, and technology acceptance, we did not find any statistical difference. This is, how can I say, our assumption, because we are saying that 2 modalities, which are more complex in terms of computation, in terms of visual cues, did not affect the usability of the system. So this is a nice finding. Well, I want to give you some take-home findings and future direction of our work. We have developed a novel digital twin-driven mixed reality system, in this case implemented for learning procedural tasks, and we focus on the Rubik's Cube notations. The outcomes of our study are these ones. So we found that visual cues positively affect the accuracy, but did not affect the usability of the system. Concerning a comparison between the interactable modality and the visual modality, we can say that the interactable users, so the user that interfaces with the interactable one, the interactable modality, were somehow more faster than the others in performing the task. Future works, of course, will address long-term retention. So we will focus on long-term retention, since our plan are to ask again to the users to do again the experiments, to investigate how long-term retention is, which are the differences among these three modalities in long-term retention. And of course, we are going to provide more, to test more form of guidances in this way. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, I think we have time for one quick question.
Thank you. Interesting presentation. Actually, reading is slower than, say, listening. So if you had auditory guidance instead of reading text, might they perform better?
Yeah, we are planning to inspect these. As I told you, we are going to inspect other form of guidances, and the auditory guidance is one of the proposals that we have in mind. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, as I said, we were a bit over time in presentation. We keep it at one question for this presentation, but he will be around after the session and during the rest of the conference, so please approach him if you have more questions. Thank you for your understanding. Would you already like to connect? And let's thank the speaker again, please. Okay. Yes, our second talk or presentation is about the effects of immersion and dimensionality in virtual reality science simulation, the case of charged particles. And our presenter is Pedro Acevedo. He's a PhD candidate in the Department of Computer Graphics Technology at Purdue University. And his interests include, there must be a lot of interest then, virtual reality, human-computer interaction, procedural content generation, games, and wireless sensor networks.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. This work was made with other colleagues at Purdue University. Immersive technologies are currently trending worldwide, with numerous efforts underway to promote their adoption in real life, in daily life. Advanced head-mount displays, or HMD, and similar products are available in the market, diminishing any concern regarding their feasibility. Consequently, there is a rising demand of mixed, virtual, and augmented reality applications for entertainment, training, and learning, which drive their need for development of more engaging and useful applications. In that sense, we need to take into account how we are going to design those kind of applications in terms of 3D technologies or VR, in which selecting the interaction paradigm is an important factor for this kind of interactions, as can be leveraging a passive experience through a 360 video, or having a more haptic and interactive application, for example, like a bowling game. However, we need to consider that not all principles are suitable for all solutions. For example, in education, immersive VR can increase processing demands on working memory and decrease knowledge acquisition compared to conventional media. So we need to consider, when designing this kind of VR interfaces, which features we need to include and what is the expected immersion level we want to provide, considering the expected outcomes of the experience. So that's why not all features are needed based on the purpose of the experience. In that sense, we have different researchers that have been explored the advantages and disadvantages of using these 3D technologies or VR, as can be discomfort, eye fatigue, dizziness, headache, disorientation, or motion sickness. That's why multiple researchers have been asking what kind of interactions or what kind of exposure, what is the time we need, is there embodiment needed or not, why we need to use those kind of technologies, there is important immersive factors or not, or which kind of visual we need to leverage. In this sense, multiple researchers have been exploring conditions, constraints, and topics under head-mount displays can perform better than desktop. In that sense, our goal for this study is to find an effective VR application. In that sense, we want to explore whether dimensionality can be a factor. With dimensionality, I refer to the way that we represent the graphics, as can be 2D or 3D. As can be seen in this example, in Halik and Kent, which developed a topographic analysis application in where the users can explore a 3D map. They were able to toggle between 3D and 2D graphics. In the results, they found that participants preferred the 3D conditions. Either way, 2D was found to be useful for wayfinding and for exploration for easy visualization. That's why in this study, we conduct an exploration on how immersion, in terms of VR and desktop, and dimensionality, 2D or 3D, impact participant experience in terms of engagement, task load, skills, and emotions when interacting with science simulations. Although we can choose like any topic in science, we prefer to focus on an electromagnetism-related concept for this study due to the abstract and invisible nature, also the reported complexity on learning even after instructions. That's why we design and develop an application to simulate charged particles interactions in which we are going to compare immersion and dimensionality, and we expect to provide insights into the preferred interactions in this kind of design of interactive simulations in VR. Exploring different words, we found that simulation are widely used in scientific research to provide controlled environments for understanding of complex phenomena that are challenging to replicate in reality. Choose a physics interaction as presented by Picker et al. In their physics VR simulation, also chemical compounds as described by Kian in their hands-on chemical application, also in terms of biological processes as can be the molecular manipulation developed by M. Liu et al. Discussing more about dimensionality, dimensionality drives the feature of the interactive virtual environment design due to the expected visualization on the environment, so either 2D or 3D. That drives how the design of the application interaction will be in terms of data visualization and how the data can be understood. For example, we have different visual aspects used for example, displaying genomic interactions, as can be 1D, 2D, or 3D. Or also we have some examples of, as can be seen here in this image, in which they perform a test to understand different spatial skills, where they use 3D components or 2D components in VR. Also, as we know, VR is not necessarily 3D all the time. As we know, different users and applications use UI elements that are usually represented as a 2D, as can be for signaling in interactive applications, for menus to control the different phases of the application, or even for control and manipulate different objects in the environment. In this research, we have different questions in which we want to see if either immersion and dimensionality are factors that influence participants in sense of performance, task load, engagement, presence, usability, skills, and emotions. These are the measurements we use to capture this data. Most of them are self-reported ratings. We have some objective data in terms of application logs, as can be time, movement, buttons. We use TLX for task load, engagement questionnaire for engagement, presence, and the others for skills, engagement, and emotions. Going through the application, we develop an interactive simulation of charged particles using Unity Game Engine and the Oculus XR plugin. Within the simulation, the user can explore the exerted electric forces between the particles. Also, they can see the electric field lines that are based on the Coulomb's law and the Faraday's principles. As you can see here rotating, there are the elements that compose the simulation. We isolate the participants in an empty room in which they can only see the simulation. We have the charged particle elements represented with color codes and different signs. We have the interest points, which are like a specific coordinate in the 3D environment in which we can see the exerted electric force in that specific position, in which the participant can see the values in newtons. We also have the electric field lines that are like going through each of the particles, following the different principles exposed by Faraday's. And we have an equidipotential surface representing the different electric charge values. In terms of the application, we develop this kind of interactive experience in which the participant in VR can grab the particles, move them down, and can see the different values updating in real time, as for example in the interest points, or for example also in the electric field lines. In terms of the study, we have the VR task. In the VR task, we ask the participant to set the particle configuration that satisfies the following relationship. The relation is related to the interest point. So we have 3 interest points in the scene in which we are going to show the values. So we ask them to perform and place a particle setting that will change those values. We ask them to have like that relation. For example, P1 higher than P2, higher than PT. So they know which particle they need to move based on the different physics interactions. In terms of research design, we also set some conditions. So we employ the 2x2 within group design. So at first we have desktop 2D in which participants manipulate with mouse and keyboard. They can move the particles with a 2D representation of the simulation. Then we have 3D, desktop 3D, is the same, but with 3D graphics. They need to perform the same task. Then in VR, we have the HMD 2D. In this case, we provide them with the right cast interaction between UI elements, that is the 2D condition. And we have the 3D one, which with enhanced interaction, as I have shown before. In terms of participants, we have 22 participants with a median age of 22 years old. Sorry. We have 70 males and 50 females in this study. In terms of VR experience, we have that the most of participants have some previous experience with VR, and only 50% of them don't have any. And also, as I mentioned, it's a between group study, so all the participants explore all the 4 conditions using the head-mount display MetaQuest 2. Let's go into the results. We conduct different 2 ways of ANOVA to compare the different findings. I will go through them really quick. So we have VR and desktop. Here in terms of time, VR perform higher. That means they spend more time in VR. In terms of buttons, the buttons that they press in VR, they were higher. In terms of movement, in VR, they move more than in desktop conditions. In terms of dimensionality, in 3D versions, they perform more movement. In terms of TLX, we have that in VR, they have higher reported workload. In terms of engagement, we have that VR report higher engagement ratings. Also, VR reported higher emotions. In terms of presence, as we expected, VR has a higher rating. We also go through different qualitative results in which the participants express their preference for head-mount displays and comparing to the desktop counterpart. In terms of discussions, we have the participant took longer in VR conditions. They also felt that VR was more demanding, required for the mental effort of using the new medium. In terms of engagement, VR performed higher, and presence also was one of the higher ones. In terms of usability, we didn't find any significant difference, similarly to skills, and also for emotion responses. In terms of implication, when designing these interactive design simulations, it's essential to show the outputs, show the different variables, so that's why we recommend to use desktop instead of VR for this kind of simulation outputs, due to the lower workload and the faster task completion. In terms of dimensionality, we didn't find as a significant factor for the user experience, but 3D was expected to be preferred. And also VR enhanced user experience, engagement, and emotion. So we recommend for future works, include a lesson at the beginning for familiarize the participants and explore different interaction methods. We also have some limitations. In terms of the VR experience, we have the UI placement was found problematic. Participant familiarity with the concept, that can be influence the ratings of the surveys. So we need to consider that for future studies. As we tended to have a 2D experience, or experience in VR can be described better as a 2.5 due to the heteroscopic view of the headset. As we know, we only focus on charged particles, but that's our scope. So our findings might not apply to other science-related concepts. These are the references used in this presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have questions from the audience? Oh, yeah.
Interesting presentation. But between desktop and VR, there's just a lot of differences, such as resolution, field of view, and contrast, and viewing distance, and so many things. So is it really a fair comparison?
We try to be as fair as possible. So one of the things we leveraged between the different application was being able to move. So for example, in VR, you can move really easily because you are in a 3D scale room environment, but in desktop, it's not that intuitive. So that's why we promote to use the keyboard. In the keyboards, we were able to move around the virtual environment. For example, like translated the camera, and also even in the 2D or 3D conditions. As you know, this is something like can be considered as a limitation because in VR, you can have a higher pop or point of view, but we haven't considered that in sense of this comparison. So we try to be as fair as we could. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that replied to your question. I hope it is. Yep. Okay.
I think we have time for one more quick question.
Hi there, really love the presentation. Any limitations? You said that the simulation was 2.5D. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Oh, I mean by that because I say that I use 2D graphics. The thing is that I didn't use 2D graphics for all the things in the environment because when they are in VR, they are surrounded to a room. So that room was 3D. I didn't limit the 2D view of this. So that's why it's easier for them to perceive the depth. So that's why they perceive the depth perception. They have it, so that's not a 2D, fully 2D experience. That's why I say it's either 2.5. Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you again for the presentation. Okay, this brings us to our third presentation in this session. The presentation is on leveraging augmented reality for understanding schizophrenia, design and evaluation of a dedicated educational tool. And our presenter is Claudia Krogmeier. She currently is a Master of Fine Arts student at the University of Wisconsin, but she has a way bigger background I learned in between. I won't talk about it now. Her research and creative practice centers on the use of visual media for mental health and well-being. Yay, works.
Great. Hello, yes, I'm Claudia Krogmeier, and today I'm presenting our work titled Leveraging Augmented Reality for Understanding Schizophrenia, Design and Evaluation of a Dedicated Educational Tool. So this was an interdisciplinary effort. It was a collaborative project in collaboration with experts in schizophrenia at the University of Bordeaux. The tool is called Livit. Livit is an augmented reality simulation of schizophrenia, which was designed to educate students in mental health fields about this disorder. We designed this using both recommendations from previous related work, and it was also inspired by lived experiences of those that have schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a serious chronic mental health disorder characterized by impairments in the individual's perception of reality. These individuals suffer not only from complex, diverse symptoms, but also from stigmatization that can come from healthcare professionals who might see these individuals as dangerous and unpredictable, despite the fact that violence from these individuals is very rare. This can not only harm relationships and decrease opportunities, but it can impede timely treatment of the disorder. So one way in which you can reduce stigma is through better education about the symptoms. So we were motivated to explore new ways in which to educate healthcare students about these symptoms. Considering that VR offers users the ability to become deeply immersed and experience new perspectives, there have been many previous simulations in VR that have tried to simulate schizophrenia. They have often simulated auditory and visual hallucinations. And while previous simulations have effectively increased participant empathy towards those with schizophrenia, they've also increased aspects of stigma, such as social distance, desire for social distance, or an increase in stereotypes. So therefore, the ability of VR to reduce stigma towards individuals with schizophrenia is not clear. But considering that augmented reality supplements reality rather than completely replaces it, we wondered if by having an experience that unfolds in the real world, would participants more easily be able to internalize and understand how these new experiences that they're having are real experiences for other individuals. So our system differs from previous virtual reality simulations of schizophrenia by focusing specifically on training. To the best of our knowledge, only one simulation has previously explored the use of AR, and this work was not formally evaluated. Our work also represents a broader range of symptoms and evaluates the simulation with expert feedback. The simulation was developed in the Unity game engine and built as a standalone application. Participants wore the Meta Quest 3 VR headset and were seated at a physical table in front of a virtual computer and a physical keyboard. They used the keyboard to complete a homework assignment, which was displayed on the computer, and the video pass-through feature of the headset allowed the user to see the physical environment while wearing the device. A virtual television was positioned on a physical table in the background of the environment, and auditory hallucinations played through the headset speakers. Before the experiment, the researcher established the size and placement for both the computer and the television within the real environment using the controllers, and these settings were locked and saved using Oculus spatial anchors, which allowed for both the screens to remain in place across participant sessions. Users completed a homework assignment displayed on the virtual computer while this virtual television played in the background. In the simulation, the user acts as a theater student. This narrative was selected because it allows for a lot of opportunity to incorporate ideas of being watched and being famous, which are two common delusions in schizophrenia. And the assignment follows a free response format in which the user responded to questions about themselves. So for example, name one thing that's important for you. Why is this important for you? During the simulation, the participant hears a variety of voices. With the voices, we represented auditory hallucinations, but we also alluded to additional symptoms such as lack of energy and motivation, as well as the difficulty of taking care of oneself. And many of these voices suggest the user is being watched and observed, and that their thoughts could be recorded by an unknown group. So voices such as "she really needs a shower" suggest the inability to take care of themselves, and voices such as "she just needs to rest" allude to a lack of energy. In the simulation, the virtual TV plays different broadcasts while the participant works on this homework assignment. Symptoms represented using the TV include delusions, which are fixed beliefs not based on facts, theft of thought, feelings that others are stealing your thoughts, as well as thought broadcasting, which is the feeling that others are reading your thoughts. Specifically, throughout the simulation, some of the user's responses to this homework assignment were broadcast on the scrolling banner of the TV screen. So for example, for this user's response to the question, "How do you deal with stress?" the user sees their response, "I rationalize and break down the problem displayed on the TV screen here." We wanted to include both future users of the tool, so students, as well as participants that could comment on the accuracy of symptom representation, so healthcare experts. Participants were instructed to respond to the homework assignment on the virtual computer. They were told they would experience symptoms of schizophrenia and that they could end their participation at any time. We had 37 participants total. It was an 8-minute simulation, after which the headset was taken off and participants responded to our questionnaire. We used thematic analysis developed by Braun and Clark to analyze our data. This is a qualitative method in which themes are identified through a careful exploration and analysis of the data. We looked at a variety of topics, such as participant feelings and experience during the simulation, as well as their ability to understand and recognize symptoms. So I will discuss our results in relation to our research questions. So our first question asked, is the simulation able to reliably represent symptoms of schizophrenia? One theme which we identified in the data was the first-person understanding of symptoms. Specifically, participants highlighted the difference that they felt in being able to experience symptoms personally versus reading about symptoms in the classroom. They also stressed that the first-person experience of symptoms helped them to better understand how it could feel to have schizophrenia, as well as how these symptoms could elicit certain behaviors. One healthcare expert mentioned the simulation was relatively close to what I imagined would be the experience of someone suffering from schizophrenia, but I could embody and understand how much it impacted me. Concerning symptom recognition, participants recognized auditory hallucinations, and half of them identified delusions, but most participants did not mention additional symptoms beyond hallucinations and delusions. Some of these symptoms were not as prominent as others in the simulation. For example, the lack of energy was alluded to in the voices, but it was not directly represented. Additionally, theft of thought and thought broadcasting could have been considered delusions by participants. So we determined that the results are encouraging, especially as participants expressed that they were better able to understand symptoms. Concerning our second research question, how effective is the AR environment in providing an engaging user experience? Participants indicated that the realism of the simulation intensified their sensation of being under surveillance. They cited hearing voices, seeing the TV broadcast, as well as the authenticity of the news report as all contributing to this feeling of observation and anxiety. They also stressed the difficulty of the homework assignment for multiple reasons. Many stated that the voices and the anxiety at being watched reduced their ability to complete this task. And a few participants mentioned issues with the augmented reality system, stating blurry vision and how heavy the headset was for making the task difficult to complete. So we determined that the environment, based on our data analysis, did provide for a dynamic user experience, but with room for improvement in concerning the augmented reality environment. Our third research question asked, what is the potential of this tool to be used for educational purposes? Concerning the implications for healthcare, participants stressed that having a first-person experience of schizophrenia in which they could feel the impact of symptoms in a real way may help reduce stigma in healthcare professions and may help to reduce judgments which come from healthcare professionals. One expert stated that the simulation may enable healthcare professionals to stop thinking that people do things on purpose, like forget an appointment, and may help understand the level of fatigue felt by people who experience these symptoms on a daily basis. Participants also mentioned many facilitators for using the simulation as a training tool, which included how short the simulation was, its ability to be used in a variety of locations, as well as how easy it could be to run and use with students. So in summary, our analysis showed that participants considered the simulation a tool with good potential for raising awareness about the symptoms of schizophrenia. So as we expand this simulation, we plan to represent additional symptoms and explore new methods for directly representing symptoms which were not recognized by participants. And we also may look into different headsets which are more comfortable for participants. It was also crucial for us to first investigate the research space and assess the suitability of this system as a training tool before we directly address stigma. So we plan to conduct studies specifically targeting stigma in the future. Thank you for your attention. Please see our paper for a lot more details concerning the design, evaluation, and discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We have time, well, actually plenty of time for questions. Well, plenty, but more than before. Any volunteers?
Hey, thank you. I was just wondering if you've considered, like, in the future doing this without augmented reality headsets, like hooking a computer up to a TV or using headphones or things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So one reason we did use augmented reality was for it to be a transportable tool. So instead of needing to grab like a computer screen and a TV screen and go to different locations, it would just be a lot easier with the headset. And also, because in our next steps, we're planning to implement symptoms such as anhedonia, which is difficulty to feel pleasure, where we wanted to be able to play with effects like color reduction in a bigger field of view. So that is kind of why we went with AR.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask you, when you tested it with medical experts, were they experts of the field of schizophrenia or more general medical experts?
I believe we had experts across a lot of different fields who did have experience working with patients that had schizophrenia. And on our questionnaire, we asked how much experience or knowledge do they already have of schizophrenia, and the experts rated that they did have significant knowledge. And we also worked with some professional peer helpers who are individuals who actually have schizophrenia, and they were also able to comment on the accuracy of this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe. So a quick question here is, I know that this is a little bit maybe outside the scope of your study here that you presented, but if you gave the simulation, or if you were to design the simulation for in a patient-facing application rather than a practitioner-facing application, could it potentially be used for intervention? Could you comment on that?
So could we use it with people that have schizophrenia to diagnose that they have schizophrenia, or to help them deal with symptoms, or both?
Maybe both, potentially diagnose or mitigate, provide some exercises.
Okay, yeah, I think that's really fascinating. I would love to work on a project like that. I know there's a little bit of research in that area, but we were not really focused on that. I don't know if I have a good response to that, but I think probably looking at more of the simulations would be useful for this study, certainly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you again. I think it's a very difficult question. This brings us to our last, but certainly not least, presentation in the session. So the fourth presentation is about Your Face, Your Anatomy, flashcard lenses enriched with knowledge maps to promote anatomy education. And our presenter is Ines Lucio, and she's completing a master's in biomedical engineering at the Instituto Superior Técnico, Universidad de Lisboa, and her research centers on developing innovative anatomy learning tools by using graph-based knowledge representations and extended reality technologies. Yes, and technology is working.
Thank you so much for the nice introduction. So hi everyone, my name is Inez. I will present our paper on revamping flashcards. Sorry. This work was done in collaboration with TU Vienna and Hajahmadi School of Health and Science. So flashcards have long been used in anatomy education to support active recall and help students retain anatomical knowledge. While they effectively promote memorization, traditional flashcards have a few key limitations. So first, traditional flashcards rely on static 2D labeled illustrations on the front and disconnected lists of concepts on the back. These lists present intricate anatomical concepts in a sequential, isolated manner without really showing how the different structures are related. This lack of context makes it harder for students to grasp the relationships between anatomical structures. Second, the medium of traditional flashcards, either paper or digital, limits their interactivity. Paper flashcards require manual flipping, and even digital versions simply replicate this experience. While effective, these formats limit the potential for more engaging experiences. So to address this, our research introduces enhanced anatomy flashcards that combine mobile augmented reality with knowledge maps. First, we use snapshot lenses as magic mirrors, creating an embodied and augmented experience that lets students visualize anatomical structures onto their own bodies. And second, we include knowledge maps on the back of the cards. But what exactly are knowledge maps? Knowledge maps are visual representations that use node edge graphs to explicitly illustrate how different anatomical concepts are connected. So each node represents a key anatomical structure, and the edges between them show the relationships among these structures. This helps students not only memorize individual concepts, but also understand how they relate to each other in a broader anatomical context. Our research aims to investigate the benefits and limitations of these flashcard lenses with knowledge maps. Specifically, we address the following two research questions. How do flashcard lenses with knowledge maps compare to conventional flashcards? And to what extent can they be an alternative to these conventional methods? To better understand the potential of our idea, we turn to related research on the use of knowledge maps and mobile augmented reality in anatomy education. While knowledge maps have been applied successfully in various fields of medical education, their use in gross anatomy remains largely limited and relying on formats such as basically drawn maps on paper or basic digital renderings. Augmented reality, by leveraging the 3D virtual space and real-world context, really gives a unique opportunity to enhance these knowledge maps. However, few AR-based implementations exist, and none for gross anatomy. Beyond having the potential to enhance knowledge maps, AR introduces embodiments, so previous AR systems based on the magic mirror concept have projected anatomical information onto users' bodies. And mobile AR adds flexibility by enabling interactive, on-the-go learning with anatomical content. Although mobile AR flashcard apps have been developed in fields like dermatology and forensic science, their application in gross anatomy in conjunction with knowledge maps remains largely underexplored. So to address this gap, we began our prototyping process by analyzing existing educational resources like Netter's anatomy flashcards and CanHub. We identified and highlighted relevant keywords based on their anatomical relationships and then manually linked them into knowledge maps using MindMove, which is a mind mapping app. Then, drawing inspiration from snapshot anatomy lenses, we developed low-fidelity prototypes using hand-drawn sketches and digital tools like Inkscape. This process helped us optimize label placement, choose accurate anatomical illustrations, and also establish color palettes. During a co-design process with biomedical engineering students, we iteratively refined our designs based on their feedback, and then using Lens Studio, which is Snapshot's custom AR platform, we developed a deck of high-fidelity flashcards that focus on the skin, bones, and muscles anatomy of the head and face. So each card follows a two-sided format, which is akin to conventional flashcards. On the front, users see anatomical face masks mapped onto their own faces with label dots that indicate the key structures of anatomy. On the back, users find a knowledge map that wraps around the anatomical face mask. And to interact with the cards, users simply tap on the screen to flip between the front and back, just like traditional flashcards, which is also a common interaction in Snapchat. Leveraging face masks objects from Lens Studio, 2D textures were mapped onto users' faces, creating an immersive effect that responds to facial movements, as you can see. To achieve this, we drew the skin face mask, and we used royalty-free stock photos for the bones and muscles. We enhanced them. We then conducted a comprehensive user study to assess the effectiveness of our flashcard lenses with knowledge maps. The study involved 44 participants, split randomly into two groups, so one using the traditional flashcards and the other using our knowledge map enhanced flashcard lenses. Participants came from diverse educational backgrounds, mostly biomedical engineering and computer science students. with varying level of anatomical knowledge, but limited AR exposure. The user study was designed to accommodate both online and in-person participation. So in-person participants in the traditional group accessed printed versions of the flashcards, online accessed digital versions of these flashcards, and participants in the experimental group used their own phone and used the Snapchat lenses running directly on Snapchat. If they did not have a Snapchat or a phone, we provided them with a Samsung Galaxy S20. This is the procedure of our user study. So first, all participants took a pre-task quiz to access their baseline anatomy knowledge. Each group then completed a habituation task to get familiar with their assigned flashcards. Following this, participants engaged in 3 tasks focused on the different levels of anatomical complexity, so skin, easy, bones, moderate, and muscles, hard. For each task, they had 3 minutes to study the contents of the flashcards, followed by a post-task quiz to measure their understanding, and we measured the quiz scores and quiz completion times. After the tasks, participants provided feedback on their satisfaction, engagement, usability, and workload through questionnaires. And then to explore preferences, we had an informal session where all participants were able to experiment with both types of the flashcards, the traditional and the flashcard lenses. And we also conducted semi-structured interviews at the end of the sessions. Moving on to the results. So we found no statistically significant difference in quiz completion times and quiz scores between the 2 groups, suggesting that both flashcard formats are as effective for retaining and refreshing anatomical concepts. On the other hand, in terms of user satisfaction and engagement, the flashcard lenses with knowledge maps clearly outperform the traditional flashcards. Participants found the lenses to be more visually appealing, more enjoyable, and particularly helpful for quickly locating and memorizing anatomical concepts. Flashcard lenses with knowledge maps scored significantly higher on the system usability scale, indicating that they were perceived as easier and more intuitive to use. Participants in both groups reported a mostly high workload, likely due to the substantial amount of information covered in the 3 minute tasks. However, flashcard lenses with knowledge maps led to a significantly lower perception of temporal demand, which indicates that the engaging and interactive nature of the lenses made the tasks feel less time pressured. Regarding preferences, the majority of participants preferred the knowledge map lenses over the traditional flashcards, and participants highlighted several key benefits of the knowledge map lenses, including the embodiment of anatomy, the effectiveness of knowledge maps in organizing information, and also the accessibility of a snapshot. However, our study faced some limitations that I still want to approach. So first, the complexity of the flashcards and the short 3 minute task window may have overwhelmed the participants, particularly those without prior anatomical knowledge. Additionally, a more balanced sample, including medical students with a wider range of anatomical expertise, would improve the generalizability of our findings. The small sample size of 22 is also a limitation. And device inconsistencies, as participants use their own smartphone on Snapchat, could have influenced user experience by a device size. And in terms of future work, we aim to refine the user experience, expand on knowledge map layouts, expand on anatomical regions, and also maybe explore lenses for biomechanical processes. So to conclude, the knowledge map lenses performed as well as traditional flashcards in terms of refreshing and retaining anatomical knowledge. However, they significantly outperform the traditional flashcards in key areas like usability, temporal demand, engagement, and overall preferences. These results indicate that knowledge map lenses offer a highly promising user-preferred alternative to traditional refreshing tools. with the potential to improve both learning efficiency with also enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. Please try a subset of our flashcards available on the QR code and on Snapchat directly. And I'm free to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I can recommend trying it out. I just did it because I wanted to see how it really works, because I had a question on that. But perhaps please first in the audience. Any questions from the audience? No? Okay. Question from me. Okay. I couldn't try out enough to have an answer. So I was wondering, like, the moment you use Snapchat and you face the camera and it displays what you're seeing there, but in order to interact with the content, actually, I was wondering what happens. Can people really focus the moment they start interacting with the rather small, like, say, knowledge items?
That was another limitation. So the text size was really small, and some users complained about having to get too close to the screen. Yeah. Maybe reducing the knowledge map size or dividing it into like smaller lenses. That would be a future plan for us. But yeah, that's definitely a limitation.
I wouldn't know. Well, I haven't programmed snap lenses yet, but it might also be that you look into some interaction techniques where you can basically zoom in when you put your finger on there.
It's possible with that to zoom in, and we also tried other interaction techniques like opening the mouth, because Snapchat has a lot of interaction by facial movements, but participants said that they got easily distracted by doing that. So imagine trying to study and doing all kind of
I can
goofy.
See that. Any questions from the audience now? Still not? Okay, I have another one.
Okay.
Final one, and then we close the session. But it's a, I think it's a tricky question. Very often in studies where you basically compare a traditional method with an immersive method, and especially studies on engagement, they always, very often, let's say not always, very often they end up with the immersive version being more engaging. And I'm always wondering, like, what might be the long-term effect? Is it mainly because of the novelty of playing with Snapchat?
I was going to say that there's really the issue of being something new, and we definitely plan on doing longitudinal studies to see if the effect still remains, but that's a great point,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks the speaker and all speakers again.